Right now we're going to be watching our standards-based grading video, which is going to explain a little bit more about those level 7s and level 9s that we talked about yesterday. And you guys are going to submit something into Canvas for the first time.
I want to talk to you guys a little bit about standards-based grading. Standards-based grading system is intended to focus on what you know instead of what you complete or turn in. Here is an example of one of our scales. A learning target is just a goal that we set for you. A level 9 represents a proficient understanding of our learning target. This just means that you can demonstrate to us your full understanding of the math goal that we set. A level 7 represents a basic understanding of our learning target. So instead of counting an answer that you give completely wrong because you didn't get the final answer 100% right, we look at your work and the process that you participated in to identify what information you provide to assess what level of understanding you are truly showing. So here our learning target is I can securely tie my shoe. When you are wearing shoes, the goal would be to have them tied securely so that you can walk around safely. That is what we consider to be a proficient or a level 9. However, we identify that someone can show some basic understanding of how to tie their shoe, even if maybe they can't complete all of the steps. In the picture, you can see that the student here has no laces. This student would receive a 0 for their work. They've made no effort, wrong or right, to reach the goal of tying their shoe. They haven't demonstrated any understanding, and they haven't made any effort. That is the only way to receive a 0, is no effort. This student's shoe has laces ready to go. However, they have not quite demonstrated any major steps needed to show they understand how to tie their shoe. This student would receive a 5. You may have noticed that the scale does not have a 1, 2, 3, or 4. This means it's impossible for you to ever receive a 10%, 20%, 30%, or 40% on any assignment that you complete. If you make an effort, right or wrong, in algebra, the lowest score that you can receive is a 5 out of 10, which is a 50%. However, that just means you're 1 point away from demonstrating a passing grade, which is a 6 out of 10 or 60% understanding on the learning target. This student's shoe demonstrates level 6 understanding of the learning target because they're in the middle of completing the first step necessary to tie their shoe, but they're still showing me right now, based on the evidence that I have, that they've not quite reached the basic understanding listed in level 7, which requires 2 steps. This student has shown 1, they crossed their laces, that's first step, and 2, that they can make a loop, which is the second step. This picture is all the evidence I have of this student's understanding, so I can only award them a 7 because this is the only evidence that they've provided to me, which means I can only see that they completed the first 2 steps, which is the description in level 7, basic understanding. This student has shown me they can fully tie their shoe. However, there's one thing that would keep them from a level 9. They didn't demonstrate that they could tie their shoe securely. So this student obviously knows all the steps necessary to tie their shoe. However, when they walk around, and that shoe's going to come untied. So we need them to demonstrate that they can do it securely. So this student would receive an 8. This student's shoe is tied fully and securely, which would award them a level 9 on the standards-based grading scale. You may be wondering, if they did what you wanted them to learn, why did they not get a 10 out of 10, which would be a 100%? The reason this student only receives a level 9 is because we can always improve upon what we know. This student did A-level work, receiving a 9 out of 10, which is a 90%, which is an A. However, we still have room to grow. Here's an example of what it means to grow. This student demonstrated that they can tie their shoes securely, which would be level 9 work. However, they went above and beyond and extended their knowledge by using 2 shoelaces. So this student would receive a level 10 on the grading scale because they demonstrated advanced understanding of how to tie their shoe. Let's practice and see if you can identify what levels these students would receive. What level do you think this student would receive? This student would receive a 5 because they have their shoe ready, but they haven't demonstrated that they know the first or second step necessary to reach a level 7. What about this student? This student would receive a 9. They demonstrated that they can securely tie their shoe, but they did not go above and beyond the expectation. What about this student? This student demonstrated that they know the first step necessary to tie their shoe, but if this is the only evidence that we have, we can only assume that a 6 is their highest level of understanding. Lastly, what about this student? This student would receive a 10. They demonstrated that they can securely tie their shoe. They went above and beyond with a new bow design.
In your notebook, go ahead and write down what you think a level 7 is, what you think a level 9 is, and any questions you still have. This is an example of what your paper should look like after watching the standards-based grading video.
So when you log into our Canvas course, all of your work and all of your lessons are going to be under the Modules tab. So when you click on that, it should pull you to this page. If for that particular day you were to submit a picture of your notebook from the day's lesson, you would click Submit Assignment, and then you would want to choose a file. But obviously we're going to need a picture of your work to submit. So you can use this little magnifying glass in the top right corner. You can type in photo booth. And then the photo booth option will pop up. you will choose that option, and then it will pop up the camera of your computer. So, hello. You're going to take your notebook and you're going to hold it up so that we can see all of your work. So, for example, here's all of my visible work. I'm going to take a picture. Now, it looks like the picture is backwards. However, when it saves right here, it flips it for you. I'm going to take that picture and I'm going to drag it right here. It's popped up, and now I can submit my assignment.
So now we're going to be moving into math. I want you guys to notice that I have used both sides of my notebook paper. On the right side, I have identified my learning target and I've written that at the top. On the left side, I've written my name at the top and I've left a ton of room for practice problems. Take a second to pause and jot this down. Today we're going to be talking about 3 different things: segment notation, coordinate points, and the midpoint formula. Notice how on the graph to the right, I have 2 points, R and S. We call these vertices. To write these points in segment notation, we would write capital R, capital S, and draw a line above them. R and S can also be considered coordinate points. The way we write coordinate points is by putting the X value, comma, the Y value, all in parentheses. So in this case, point R is to the left 4 along the X-axis and up 2 along the Y-axis. Therefore, we write it as -4, 2. S is to the right 6 along the x-axis and down 8 along the y-axis. 6, -8. The last thing we're going to be talking about today is how to use the midpoint formula. The midpoint formula can be used to find the point that is in the exact middle of any segment. It can also be used to find a missing end point if we're given the end point and the midpoint. Now take this opportunity to write down example 1, level 7, underneath your notes.
We need to copy down the segment notation and the coordinate points. So the segment notation is going to be R goes to S, and it's a line segment. For our coordinate points, if I count to R, we're going backwards 7 and up 8. So R will be -7, 8. Point S is at 4, 4. From here, we need to plug into the midpoint formula. R is going to be x1, y1. S is x2, y2. M equals -7 plus 4 divided by 2. For y1, we'll put in 8 plus 4 divided by 2. So that's our formula with the numbers. In solving, I'm going to add the tops together first and then divide later. -7 plus 4 is -3, so bring that over 2. 8 plus 4 is 12. Again, bring down the divide by 2. Last step is to actually divide. -3 divided by 2 is -1.5. 12 divided by 2 is 6. So the midpoint of that line segment is at -1.5 and 6. Another way of writing that, we could keep 3 over 2 as a fraction.
Now take a minute to write down example 2, level 7 in your notebook. So I'm going to go ahead and label these endpoints 1 and 2. So now I'm going to go ahead and write out my midpoint formula. Remember how I labeled these 1 and 2? I'm going to go ahead and label these x1, y1, and x2, y2. So the last step I have is to plug these numbers into my equation. x1 is -2, plus my x2 is 4, my y1 is -1, and my y2 is 2. So now I have 2 simple things that I'm going to need to simplify. Let's go ahead and simplify the top on each of these. So -2 plus 4 is going to give me 2. I'm going to bring the 2 down from the bottom. And over here, I have -1 plus 2, which is going to give me 1 on top. And I'm going to bring my 2 down to the bottom. I have 1 step left. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So I know that my midpoint is 1, 1/2. Or it's definitely okay to write this as 1, 0.5. If you guys ran out of room on that page, like me, go ahead and flip to the next page and write down example 3, level 9. So we know that my endpoint R is back here at -7 up 8, so I'm going to go ahead and label that. My midpoint M is over here at over 4 up 4, so I'm going to go ahead and label that as 4, 4. And we know because of my segment notation that I'm going to have another endpoint S over here. So I'm going to go ahead and draw an arrow because I know that my other endpoint S is going to be somewhere in this vicinity. So in order to go about finding that, I'm going to draw out my midpoint formula. Now I'm going to want to plug the information that I'm given in the problem into my formula. Remember, my midpoint is 4, 4, so I'm going to write this on the outside. Remember, I'm only given one endpoint, so I'm going to go ahead and label this as x1, y1, and I'm trying to find x2, y2. So my x1 is -7. Remember, I don't know what my x2 is. My y1 is 8. Remember, I don't know what my y2 is. So now this becomes two separate expressions that we're trying to solve. So my 4 is my x value here, and this is going to be the x value here. So I'm going to say 4 equals -7 plus my x2, which I'm trying to find, all over 2. And this is my y value of my midpoint, and this is my y value of my midpoint as well. So I'm going to write 4 equals, remember I'm trying to find my y value over here, and now all that's left to do is solve these. So I'm going to multiply by 2 on both sides. I'm going to add 7. I'm going to end up with 15 equals x2. And over here, if I multiply by 2, 8 equals 8 plus y2. Subtract 8 from both sides. 0 equals y2. So the last thing I want to do is write my endpoint. Under example 3, take a second to write down our last example, number 4, level 9.
So I know that I'm missing endpoint D, but I'm going to use this for the midpoint, and C is going to be my x1, y1. You've already seen the midpoint formula multiple times, so remember we start with the midpoint, 4, -3, we know that much. I also know that x1 is 2, I do not know x2, and we're taking the average of it. And then my y value is also 2, but I don't know y2. And again, we're dividing everything by 2. So here, this 4 is the x value, so that's going to be paired with the first part of the formula. This -3 is the y value of the midpoint, so I'm going to put that with the y equation and solve two equations. Step number 1, to get rid of divide by 2, we're going to multiply by 2. 8 equals 2 plus x2. To get x2 by itself, we subtract both sides by 2 to get 6 equals x2. So I know that's the first half of my endpoint D. The second half, again, it's going to be very similar steps. We're going to start by multiplying both sides by 2. So -6 equals 2 plus y2. Then to get y2 by itself, subtract both sides by 2. So -8 is our y2 value. So my endpoint D is going to be the point 6, -8.
Now that we've done 4 examples together, you guys are going to have the opportunity to try some on your own. On the left-hand side of your paper, go ahead and write down the problems in the upcoming slides and try them on your own. Contact your teacher if you have any questions. The answers are on the next slides. Good luck.